Hi everyone. In this quick video, I want to clear up a common confusion in Unreal Engine 5, the difference between Vertex Paint in modeling mode and Vertex Paint in mesh paint mode. I think a lot of people assume Vertex Paint always works the same way, but it actually depends on which tool you use and also on whether Nanite is enabled on the mesh. Here is my test scene. I'm going to take this wall and duplicate it a few times. So now I have 3 copies of exactly the same static mesh. And the question is, can these 3 meshes have completely different vertex paint? Or do they all have to share the same paint? The answer is, it depends on the workflow you use. At the end of the video, I'll also show you a simple chart that summarizes the differences. These walls use a material where the vertex colors control the blend between different surface layers. In this example, I'm blending bricks with 2 different plaster materials. Let's start with modeling mode. I go into modeling mode, then attributes, and choose paint vertex colors. I'll switch the visualization back to the original material so we can see exactly what the material is doing. Now I can select a vertex color channel and paint directly onto the mesh. Here, for example, I can remove or reveal this material layer. And with another channel, I can control the second layer. So visually, this works exactly as you would expect from Vertex Paint. But watch what happens when I press accept. All 3 duplicated meshes now have exactly the same Vertex Paint, and that's the important part. When you use Paint Vertex Colors in modeling mode, you're modifying the vertex colors stored on the static mesh asset itself. These 3 actors are all using the same static mesh asset, so they all receive the same vertex color information. However, you'll also notice that the displacement is still active. That's because Nanite is enabled on this mesh. So with this workflow, I can keep Nanite and Nanite displacement, but all duplicates of the same static mesh share the same vertex paint. Now let's compare that with mesh paint mode. If I select this mesh and go into mesh paint mode while Nanite is enabled, I can't use the standard per instance vertex color painting workflow. So let's open the static mesh and disable Nanite. And immediately you can see one of the consequences. I no longer have the Nanite displacement on these walls. But now I can select my 3 duplicated meshes, go into mesh paint mode, select vertex color, and paint them independently. I'll use the first vertex color channel here, and now I can paint this wall one way, paint the second one differently, and give the third one another variation. So now these 3 walls are still using the same static mesh asset, but each placed instance can have its own vertex paint. That's the major difference. I'm no longer using modeling mode and modifying the static mesh asset itself. I'm using mesh paint mode, which allows me to store different vertex color data on each instance in the level. So these 2 tools may sound very similar, but they don't behave the same way and they don't give you the same result. And that's really the key idea of this video. With modeling mode Vertex Paint, I can keep Nanite and Nanite displacement, but the vertex colors are stored on the static mesh asset. That means every duplicate using that same asset shares the same paint. With mesh paint mode vertex color, I can give every instance unique paint, even though they're all using the same static mesh. But for this workflow, Nanite needs to be disabled. And I think this is exactly where a lot of the confusion around Vertex Paint comes from. People often talk about Vertex Paint as if it were a single workflow, but in Unreal Engine the result depends on where you're painting the vertex colors and how that data is stored. So if you're working with environment art, modular assets, or material blending, it's important to choose the workflow that matches what you're trying to achieve. Here is the final comparison chart. The quick rule is, if you want nanite and nanite displacement, use modeling mode, paint vertex colors. Just keep in mind that every duplicate of the same static mesh will share that paint. This can still be very useful. For example, if you're using several pillars or rocks and rotating them around, the repetition may not be very noticeable. It's also a perfectly good solution for unique meshes that aren't duplicated throughout the environment. On the other hand, if you're building something like a modular wall set and you want to duplicate the same wall many times while giving every copy a different material blend, then mesh paint mode or vertex color is probably the better choice. You can reuse the same static mesh and paint every instance differently, but the trade-off is that nanite needs to be disabled, so you also lose nanite displacement. So neither workflow is necessarily better. It's simply a choice between the features you need for a particular asset or environment. Hopefully this clears up some of the confusion around Vertex Paint in Unreal Engine 5. If you found this useful, feel free to like and subscribe, and let me know if you'd like a deeper tutorial on this material workflow or on stylized surface. Thanks for watching.